Hi, welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything happening there and then realizing that we're only talking about the comics universes, not the cinematic ones, and all these different universes with their own multiversal crises have gotten a little bit out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual nerd host, Cece, and after 5 long years, I'm a dog mom again. All right, listeners, listen. I don't know how your Thanksgiving was, but mine included a doggo doing everything in her power to get in the middle of me cooking. So,
And I am your expert, quote unquote, nerd host, AMDS,
expert.
with plans to steal said dog. I mean, just prepping for the holidays. And I already feel myself getting crushed by the stress that comes with it. But I also got X-Men 97 action figures, so there's
Ooh.
that. Say hello to Sunspot and Jubilee. Hi, Gee.
Hello.
Hi, Holly. You should listen to the podcast.
Hello, Sunspot and Jubilee, and voice actors who you know and by first name. That's cool. You were very cool. So whenever you sit there and try to be like, expert, okay, whatever, if you want. This is the reason why I'm asking him burning questions whenever we have custody, all right? But I want to make sure that we're clear that just because we're clarifying the format doesn't mean that we're skipping out on it, right? Of course, right. So, podcast listeners, what are we nerding out about this week? Now, just a reminder, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It does not just have to be heroes and villains. Although, since Wicked Part 2's come out, people are having big feelings about Glinda's complicity, bigger feelings about that gray shawl, and the nest of absolutely resounding attraction to the Cynthia Erivo, Jonathan Bailey chemistry. It might be this generation's Mummy era bisexual awakening movie. Apparently it takes a couple of homosexuals to portray heterosexuality.
Hey, I mean, they pulled it off very well. There were a lot of thirsty people.
Yeah, I have to say, like, corn had previously been a fun euphemism used to get around TikTok censors, and now I'm trying to figure out, is straw gonna become that now too?
Nah, it doesn't rhyme with the other thing.
I'm sure we could find something to do with the straw man, though.
Yeah, although I'm kind of laughing about the fact that, with Straw Boy, a lot of people think he looks like Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, which is wild because he looks like CGI version of Ryan Reynolds, but it was all practical. So.
Yeah, the practical effects were like, Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of the discussion about whether it was CGI or not. And it's like, no, that was.
But you know what? I'm a big fan of the part where he's just like, yes, I'm sexiest man alive. Yes, I'm going out on top with everybody talking about Wicked. Also, peace out. I'm not talking to y'all for a couple of years. I've got other things to do. So yeah. But also, no, I'm really excited about about the dog. She's a rescue. We went to one of the pop-ups at the animal care centers of New York. We went there and we met this puppy, and I mean, she's 5 years old. She's a puppy.
All dogs are puppies.
Exactly.
No matter their age.
And so to get around husband guy's concerns about size and weight and things like that, I just asked him if she was too big. Is this dog too big? Is this dog too big? I didn't actually sit there and put in a pound limit, and that's how I ended up with a terrier Pibble mix.
Yeah.
And she's very much just like, I would like to sit on you whenever possible. She is very good about giving space and boundaries to the baby, although she did get the zoomies, and I had to make sure that he was staying next to me because she was just going in a loop, and he's just like, I want to wander into it. Stay out of traffic, bro. Stay out of traffic. But yeah, she's so cute. I'm so excited.
Very happy for you.
So, what are you nerding out about this week?
Well, I've been doing a rewatch of the DC animated universe. It's been a few years since I've like sat down and I started rewatching Batman the Animated Series,
Mhm.
and I got through that, then the Superman animated series, then kind of jumped into Justice League, and then I'm about three-fourths of the way done with Justice League Unlimited.
Mm.
And it really, when you're watching it back to back to back, it's really kind of just shocking how, I guess, massive of a universe they developed over what was initially just going to be 3 seasons of Batman stories.
Mhm.
And you just have a really drastic change from very noir style storytelling to fighting space gods by the end. And that's not even including stuff with like Static Shock, the Zeta Project, Batman Beyond.
I am not gonna lie, I have not sat there and thought about the vast quantities of the DC animated universe that exists, despite the fact that I definitely watched a number of DC animated shows, throughout my entire life.
Yeah, no, it's like, and this universe gave us like the definitive voice of Batman, Kevin Conroy, rest in peace.
Mm.
To this day, most people, if they read a Batman comic, they hear Kevin Conroy's voice.
I will say that Mark Hamill's Joker is also pretty iconic, and it still amuses me that that is, Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I'm still just imagining because originally Mark Hamill wasn't cast as Joker.
Mhm.
Originally, it was what's his name, Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture, Tim Curry. Tim Curry
Oh,
was the original voice of the Joker for Batman the Animated Series, but then they recast him with Mark Hamill.
yeah, because I feel like Tim Curry's Joker would either sound like he's trying to buttle him or he's trying to seduce him, and I'm not sure which is better.
I mean, depending on who's writing Joker, I'm just picturing
Well,
Bat or Joker sounding like the dad from the Thornberries.
you know what? That could be fun. That could be fun. But
Yeah, but yeah, it's been fun just kind of rewatching this and just remembering these stories, these characters, even though I am still never going to forgive them for what they did to my favorite Robin.
I mean, that's fine. Honestly, I have never forgiven the Sandbenders for what they did to Appa. I realize it's not quite the same thing, but it's
Yeah,
not
because I'm angry at
not
the
the same
production
thing.
crew. I'm angry at the production crew, not the characters in the story.
I am angry at the production crew for deciding to put Appa through that. How dare they? How dare they? They didn't have to do that. Appa could have been fine. You could
And
have had a perfectly fine Robin, and they chose to hurt you this way.
they did, they did.
So we're going to take a quick break for me and AM to coo some about my dog. But it's also very important that you stay tuned all the way to the end of the episode for my very silly Patreon joke. All right. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back to up your nerd cred. All right. Welcome back. So the question that's burning me up is Wonder Twin power. Who the hell are you? All right. So when I was a wee lass, I got to spend a lot of time with my grandparents in the summer, which meant that I low-key watched a lot of cartoons when they were busy existing and having jobs and being adults and everything or whatever.
Boo.
Boo! Why are you not spending all of your time and attention on me? Because you have bills to pay? Because you live in New York? That's
Or at least
silly.
watching cartoons. They could have been watching cartoons too.
It's fine. They watched cartoons with me when they could. But I will say that I watched a lot of Super Friends on Cartoon Network in the mid-90s. And I remember the Wonder Twins being there, but I remember also not thinking about them much outside of maybe like an occasional meme.
Yeah, Wonder Twins were very much a product of the times.
Well, so the strongest trope in my head about them is the they did a spoof of like I think like the Hanna-Barberas or just in general on Cartoon Network where Jayna turns into an eagle and Zan turns into a bucket of water. And it's just like, I could be beaten by a sponge. It wouldn't even have to be an evil sponge, right? So
Yeah, yeah. No, that was
I
always a interesting choice by the creators, giving one like that kind of shape-shifting ability and then making another character with a much more limited power set.
well, listeners, I made the mistake of cracking a joke where AM could hear it about how the Wonder Twins are the useless teens of the Super Friends. And you can see based on the face that he's making now and the face that and you can guess the face that he made then. As a reminder, I am very much the casual here. So I guess the first part of learning who the Wonder Twins are is by formally introducing them. So their code name is the Wonder Twins, and their legal names are Zan and Jayna.
Well, legal, I mean, given names, because I don't know what the legality is on their planet.
Fair. I guess the government recognizes them somehow, though, right? So can we just call it a government name?
I think they also have Earthbound secret identities that Batman might have given them, so their government name or legal name might be completely different. I honestly cannot remember.
Okay, so the names that we know these two by are Zan and Jayna.
Correct.
They were created by Norman Maurer, William Hanna, and Joseph Barbera. Some of those names seem familiar. They debuted in the all-new Super Friends Hour on September 10th, 1977. Ha! Fun fact, Harley Quinn wasn't the only character who made the jump from screen to comics, rather than the other way around. And the problem, though, is that the Wonder Twins, as creations, were nearly a full generation ahead of her, creation-wise, but like Hugo Strange disappearing for 20 years at a time, they weren't really able to get a super solid foothold in the canon because they didn't really fit into the subsequent age as well.
Yeah,
right?
it was an interesting thing with certain characters kind of got created for one medium or the other. Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, for example, was created because the Adam West TV show really wanted a female character for girls to latch onto. And so they introduced her into the comics. So it was kind of like cross synergy going back then. But
We gotta
characters
sell
like
more toys.
Huh?
We gotta sell more toys.
Essentially, although I don't think they had any Batgirl toys at the time, now that I think about it. I mean, eventually there would be, but I don't think they had any during the Adam West run. But
Okay, well,
yeah, it's just I'd never seen like a purple Batgirl action figure from that era or doll or whatever they would have used. But the
well,
Wonder Twins, on the other hand, were never
if
entirely.
somebody's able to find this for us and like send it,
Oh
I
yeah, please.
suppose.
There's photos. Please share it with us.
Let us know.
Yeah. But with the Wonder Twins, they were. I don't feel like they were entirely created to sell toys or, but they were created to fit a very niche part of the show. But unfortunately, they were always kind of presented as more gag characters, but we'll get into that in a moment.
Well, let's consider who it is that they actually replaced within like the Super Friends, because
Exactly.
they replaced Marvin and Wendy and Wonder Dog, and
Yeah.
they were
So,
even more
so
embarrassing.
when the original Super Friends were created for television, the audience was very much wanting to have or not the audience, the production crew really wanted to have an audience insert character or several. And since it was being, and the thing was, they had Robin, they had Dick Grayson's Robin as part of the team, but fortunately for Robin, but unfortunately for their audience insert character, Dick Grayson had basically become a icon of his own. Yes, it was Batman and Robin, but Robin stood on his own. People knew that character. He was popular, iconic. So they need something that kids would be able to relate to, put themselves into, feel like, yeah, I can't be Batman and Robin, but I could be this character. That led to the creation of essentially the Hanna-Barbera archetypes of Scooby-Doo characters.
Well, I mean, you gotta have...
Yeah, because Scooby-Doo was already really popular at this point. They'd been around for a good few years, and a lot of the Hanna-Barbera shows, especially involving teens and kids, followed the Scooby-Doo formula. So they created Wendy, who was essentially a combination of Daphne and Velma. She was beautiful, but super smart, and, she was this young teenage girl with poofy black hair and bell-bottom jeans and stuff like that. And then you had Marvin, who essentially was Shaggy with a green cape. Same personality, the far out man, kind of borderline hippie. And funny enough, Marvin was revealed to be I forget if it was a son or nephew of Wonder Woman's secret identity.
Okay.
It's a very interesting piece of lore. So Marvin's last name is White, and apparently he was related to the woman who Princess Diana took her identity from when she came to man's world. Could you ever wonder how Diana ended up joining the military without a social security number, background? or normal history.
I assumed they forged that stuff for her because she's a goddess.
In the original stories, she met a woman who looked exactly like her, and she stole her life, essentially. And then the original Diana Prince went off to do her own thing.
So Don Draper is a copycat like 20 years later. Great. Everybody does stuff 20 years later.
Yeah.
Everything comes back 20 years Wait a minute. Bell bottoms are going to come back again.
Probably. And then, we had Wendy and Marvin, who were the kid insert characters. But what's a TV show without a cute animal sidekick? And then we had Wonder Dog, who essentially was Discount Scooby-Doo with a cape. These were the Wish versions of the Mystery Inc. gang, essentially.
Oof.
Yeah. And, they were part of the show for the first, I think it was only the first season they were part of the show, and then they got replaced.
Okay, because I barely remember them, but I do remember them as being kind of just like, why are you here?
Yeah, so they were brought in, and, the audience, as far as I can tell, didn't really click with them because they were kind of too jokey. They were too, normal. So that was what led to the creation of the Wonder Twins.
I mean, thank you. Like, DC is where you have all of your gods cosplaying as men. And if you have just random, just like teenagers, who don't even have attitude, all right? Like, you can't just send random teenagers into battle next to goddesses.
It was always very weird that Wendy and Marvin and Wonder Dog were there because they were essentially junior members of the Justice League. They were members of the team. And you're just kind of like, okay, but why?
This
I
is
mean, with
child
Marvin, there's
endangerment.
nepotism at least involved. And I guess Wendy was his best friend, so she got...
That still feels like child endangerment. I don't care if they're grown adults. Anyway,
If
moving
we're
on from
talking about
them.
child endangerment, we also have to give side eye to a certain boy, Wonder, too.
We're moving on. We're not talking about them. Who we are talking about are the twins. The twins, Jayna and Zan, are Exorian aliens sent to Earth to train with the Super Friends and assist the Justice League. So whenever they're going into battle, they touch hands and yell, "When the twin powers activate!" They also have a cute animal sidekick in the form of a blue monkey named Gleek.
Yeah, they also fell into the animal sidekick thing. But funny enough, even though we didn't see it in the TV show, they kind of just jumped from season 1 to season 2 with Marvin and Wendy, and suddenly the Wonder Twins are there.
Yeah.
The comic tie-in actually explained how we jumped to those two different groups of teens.
Yes.
So, according to the comics, Wendy and Marvin had matured enough that they were going to go to college. So, they were going to leave the Justice League and, go off and do their adulthood stuff. And Wendy and Marvin and Gleek just conveniently showed up around the same time and just kind of took their spots as junior members of the Justice League.
Zayna and Zan and Gleek. I listened to Rachel Berry and them a lot back in the day, and being a Gleek is very awkward. Like, being a Gleek was a problem then, but Blue Monkey. So, all right.
Blue Monkey with an extremely long tail.
Yes, with it had super strength and could was very prehensile with the tail.
Yeah, and it was mostly the tail that was, I guess, super strong. The monkey itself, I don't think had any strength beyond the tail.
That's
and
still
it was very
too much.
Annoying.
All right, so now, remember I was telling you that Cartoon Network bumper, right? It was technically accurate, but they were definitely downplaying their powers. All right, so Jayna can transform into any animal. Now, you remember the entire conceit of Animorphs and how they had to absorb DNA of animals they wanted to transform into, and they had a 2-hour time limit. But, these folks were able to take down a whole alien empire. Yet Jayna doesn't have to absorb DNA, and she doesn't have a time limit. And my man Zan, look, he can transform into any form of water in any physical state. So there's water bending, and then there's him doing the bending. Janet Jackson joke. So we have
I think it's something completely different.
I know. We have a level 20 wild-shaped druid and a water elemental, and their punchlines. What the fuck?
I mean, you gotta remember a couple of things. First off, this was the 1970s going to the 1980s? So animation budgets for especially Hanna-Barbera productions were super limited. So they were not going to show them go full-blown, power levels. Also, they need to make sure that the actual Justice League played a bigger role. So these kids with these very versatile powers had to be made sure that they were still the rookies. They did not have as much control or, creativity with their powers because they were still learning. So we weren't going to get the badass heroes. We were going to get Bucket of Water and, a snake.
I mean, I get that, but I feel like they would have figured out the whole, like, evil sponge situation by the time they were, like, 2 or something.
I mean, considering they're from a planet where these powers are probably pretty, normal, you
Mm.
would think so. But again, the whole premise of their involvement with the League was to learn how to be superheroes.
Alright. Well, so they did have, like, a faster transition to the comic books than, Harley Quinn did. So, like, we had their first comic book appearance, Super Friends #7 in 1977.
Yep. Well, they had to do it that way because, they were trying to sell stuff with that, and the tie-in comic was already going on at the time. So, perfect opportunity for synergy.
So, technically, in the comic continuity, they're Exorian metahumans. Wait, so I was assuming that everybody there was, like, not tied to a twin, Village of the Dam, and more that they're old school shapeshifters. Are they are they always twins?
Generally, from what I understand, yes. In most mythologies, they're twin setups, but not always. It kind of depends on the writers at the time.
Yeah, because again, in Village of the Damned, you have that one twin that didn't have their other twin, and so it felt poorly for everybody. I'm okay. Well, I'm not going to compare the two things because the Exorians suffered a plague, and so Zan and Jayna escaped with a traveling circus, and then the traveling circus exploited them too much, and they escaped there as well. The Slippery twins then warned the Justice League of a threat against the Earth, and I mean, it's the 70s, so they get to stay on as junior heroes.
Yep, and this was a story where they replaced Marvin, Wendy, and Wonder Dog. This storyline was where we got them coming in just as the other guys were being pushed out to go to college. Easy transition. It's basically like when you watch Power Rangers and, the new color-coded kids showed up just as the previous Rangers were heading off to a, peace conference.
A peace conference, or to go and meet somebody and break a man's heart in a Dear John letter, the first one that I ever saw in my life. I was not prepared for Dear John letters.
Yeah, there's a whole generation of fans who are still bitter about that.
Yeah. But you know what? We can blame the producers. So the Wonder Twins were technically supposed to be very like Donnie and Marie coded,
100%.
based on when they came out.
Their designs looked just like their Johnny and Marie, but with dumber haircuts.
So they came across to me, though, as being Southeast Asian. Actually, not just me, because there's a Wonder Twins movie with KJ Apa and Isabel May that didn't move forward because, yes, they are technically aliens. The actors didn't really. Those actors didn't really like line up with the way that the twins had been drawn. Like, yes, KJ Apa is like half Samoan, so he is Southeast Asian, but it just
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if they had intended them to look Southeast Asian in the original production of the Wonder Twins,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, they were originally designed to be very much, Donnie and Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason why it's particularly like designed with the eyes and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
was because Donnie and Marie had very beautiful eyes and eyelashes, so they gave them like those very feminine looking like winged eyes.
Well, I mean,
So basically,
they're very almond. They're very
yeah, so
almond. They have jet black
basically the
hair
Wonder
and
Twins
brown
look like
skin.
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically the Wonder Twins kind of look like they're doing the mascara, or that they could be Southeast Asian. So, and truth be told, a lot of people prefer the idea that they were Southeast Asian or inspired by that. Because remember, this was the 70s going into the 80s, and it was super white.
Yeah, so we were actually introduced to the Wonder Twins when DC was trying to be more diverse, equitable, inclusive, however you want to describe it in the 70s. And they were actively putting more non-white characters into the canon. I mean, some of the other heroes we saw in Super Friends or Samurai, Apache Chief, Black Vulcan, El Dorado. It was the 70s. They'd barely invented diversity. Racial sensitivity took a little more time.
Yeah, it was like, hey, we need people from all over the world. Great. We're going to use stereotypes.
Choices.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate thing about the time. Like I say, on one hand, you gotta give them props that they were trying, just not doing very good at it.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, a lot of these cartoonists might not have actually had the opportunity to interact with these minorities that they were trying to portray, so.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that, even though, especially during the 70s and 80s, it was still pretty white, the comics had been introducing, characters of color by this time.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where they could have probably gone into the DC well, but I think Hanna-Barbera wanted to be able to create characters that they could own. maybe?
Yeah, well, because the Wonder Twins, like, their actual, like, proper canon is largely within, like, the context of, like, the TV continuity more so than the comics. But the downside to this, though, is that while wacky antics are fun for Saturday morning cartoons, they came around too late in the Bronze Age for any kind of good staying power. And as they were originally conceived, they were too goofy for the modern age.
Which is unfortunate because with a little reworking, they could have worked really well in the modern age, but no one's been able to quite pull off that.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit difficult to a certain extent the way that they were being originally described, or at least the way that like I'd seen them described. It's kind of hard to take them seriously and fit them into like the whole like darker and grittier TM version of the DC universe that we had in the 80s and 90s. You know, and you've got Teen Titans, you've got Young Justice. It's hard to have your gimmick be cute teen heroes when we're plowing through Robins the way that we have.
I mean, I get that, but it is also one of those things where it's like the basic premise for these characters can work. You
Hmm.
know, the fact that they were like put into slavery essentially, that they escaped to Earth and were taken in by heroes. That's essentially Starfire's origin story, you know?
I will,
So, and the way their powers work, I mean, if you look at characters like, say, Iceman for the X-Men
yeah.
or Mystique from, again, the X-Men, their powers are very similar to the Wonder Twins, a shapeshifter and a person who can manipulate liquid and ice and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So, and those two characters have become extremely diverse with immensely powerful abilities. So
Yeah.
it's not like it would have been all the time Bucket Boy and, Pterodactyl.
I did point out the fact that it was like, a water elemental and a level 20 druid wild shape. And if you do not play Dungeons and Dragon, basically level 20 is as high as you can possibly go. At that point, you can pick a fight with God and win. I am not sure which god actually I'm referring to in that, but if you are like level 20 and like everything is all like maxed out level 20, you could pick a fight with God and win in the D&D verse. So they are incredibly powerful, right? And
They could be.
nobody paid attention to them for 2 decades. They came back in Extreme Justice #9 in 1995.
Oh God, Extreme Justice.
Tell me about it.
I mean, there's a content creator, Linkara from Atop the Fourth Wall,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a reoccurring joke that whenever you talk about the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
there's either a character called this guy,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like, dude, everything's extreme. Ah!" And
Yeah.
that's essentially what they were trying to do with Extreme Justice. They basically took a handful of the existing Justice League at the time, which were not like Batman, Superman, and whatnot, but instead like Captain Atom, Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, and they gave them all like gritty armor and, battle trauma and PTSD and crap like that. They were
Is
trying
that
way
ex-
too hard to make the Justice League interesting again because unfortunately popularity in the league had kind of wavered by this point because unfortunately those Super Friends kind of diluted the taking it seriously with the Justice League,
Yeah, that's fair.
and then there's just the fact that, they did kind of like the Justice League kind of book for a while kind of became a joke book in some ways
Yeah.
during the Justice League International stuff where, Batman was running the team and it was like Martian Manhunter, Black Canary, Booster Gold, and Blue Beetles, and it was a bit more comedic.
So, are you suggesting that the reruns that I was watching in the mid to late 90s were not helping the image of the Wonder Twins as
Kind
legitimate
of.
serious heroes?
Yeah, kind of, because unfortunately the Super Friends became very popular mainstream, but also created a lot of jokes like Aquaman being useless. The Wonder Twins were, these Ozzy
Useless.
Marine guys, and, it was cute. It was kid friendly, and with Extreme Justice, they were trying to go for badass. And
Mm-mm.
yeah, then they tried to update the Wonder Twins, which unfortunately they went a little too hard into overcompensating.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna lie. I did not see enough about them in this time frame to think that they were really like out here like making big names for themselves in a positive
they
way.
they really didn't. They appeared in that storyline, and they were very like, angry teens. And if I remember correctly, I don't think they even spoke English. I think they only spoke their native alien language. I can't remember because This was not a book that I read. I flipped through it at one point
Yeah.
because I heard about the Wonder Twins being in it. I was just like, all right. And I had very little desire. It was too
Yeah.
90s.
And that's why they were shuffled right off back into the continuity.
Yeah, I mean, they were out of a continuity, but they did make some appearances here and there. One of the most prominent ones I can think of is during Young Justice during the
Mhm.
last couple of years. There was a big team up storyline where Wonder Girl, who's now at this point Cassie Sandsmark, is leading the team,
Mhm.
and her along with Robin and Superboy and the rest of the Young Justice team bring in every teen hero,
Mhm.
and two of them are the Wonder Twins. And
What
I
time frame did this happen?
late 90s.
Okay. So this is still, like, in, like, the extreme justice kind of era?
No, this Extreme Justice thing had already crashed and burned. That was long gone. Grant Morrison had taken over Justice League and
Okay.
rebooted it as JLA, and he brought back the Golden Heroes. So
Mhm.
we had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, The Flash, a Green Lantern, and the core seven heroes that
Yeah.
most people think of when they think of the Justice League. So by this point, the League had taken over. The original Teen Titans were now just the Titans. They were having their own adventures, and
Mhm.
then Robin, Impulse, and Superboy created the Young Justice team, which was the 90s superhero team of teenagers. And
They boy
that
banded everything that
yeah, and with Young Justice, that was more of a jokey book compared to, say, Titans or Justice League, which were a lot more adult storytelling.
Mhm.
Young Justice they had very adult stories sometimes, but they were still jokes and fun. It was very much like how the Justice League International book was in the 80s.
Okay.
And, the Wonder Twins were minor characters in that storyline. Their big thing was that they did not speak any English, they only spoke their native language.
Rude.
And they thought that CDs were a party food and tried eating them.
Would be really mad if somebody ate my CDs, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
But they were, shown to be decently powerful. Kane was able to turn into an entire tidal wave and help with he was doing some very proper attacks, and Jayna was, strangling out bad guys as a giant serpent and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where this was a good introduction for them, I felt. Like, if they had been able to join Young Justice, maybe they could have, made it out a bit further than they did.
Like everything apparently in the DC universe, 20-year gap, and people are like, "Hey, who can we pull back?" And the Wonder Twins came back with Mark Russell at the helm in like 2019.
This was part of the Wonder Comics initiative, and that one was helmed by Brian Michael Bendis, who was very much getting into nostalgia. So he was bringing writers and artists to bring back some of the characters and stuff that he personally really loved.
Mhm.
So Young Justice, for example, was brought back after being retired and becoming the Titans back in the early 2000s, and the Wonder Twins became part of that initiative as well.
I mean, look, bell bottoms turned into Jinkos, and I'm sure that my kid is going to have some horrifying like pants too. So, again, 20-year cycles, right? So this time, visually updated, right? Good. But
But not by much. The costumes
no,
weren't that different.
no, I think that it feels a little bit more like actively brown though.
Yeah.
It feels like it's going to be much more difficult for them to have KJ and Isabel cast as them in the future. And so my understanding is that they are currently exiles from Exor, which is
Uh-huh.
funny as I say it, but it would be nice if they could have a good relationship with their home planet ever. So they're still teens. They're going to school at South Metropolis High. So good job, stay in school. And rather than the like somewhat demeaning title of like junior heroes, they're interns at the Hall of Justice.
Yeah, this was around the time where they were starting to really play into the concepts of the League being similar to Justice League Unlimited. They had a lot more characters involved. They brought back the Hall of Justice as an actual location for the heroes to hang out in.
Hmm.
And yeah, the Wonder Twins were kind of brought in as your, you know, again, heroes in training, but now they're interns sort of thing. We're not part of any formal teams. At around this time, there are several teams like Damien's Teen Titans
Mm,
and the return of Young Justice, led by Robin and Superboy and Wonder Girl.
mhm.
But yeah, they were still kind of there, and it just kind of felt like they wanted to play with those old stories, but yeah, actually have them with character arcs and whatnot.
So, do you think that they can get college credit for their internship? I mean, they are under supervision of the Justice League. And I mean, look, there's tons of kids who get college credit taking AP courses. Why can't you get, credit for
I think they
anatomy
had
and physiology?
did I'm trying to remember if they had secret identities in this storyline. I think they may have,
All right. Well,
maybe not.
what I will say is that Mark has also made sure to put some respect on their powers. All right. Jayna is not limited to tearing animals. Zan could get into a fight with the polar vortex and win. They fight crime.
They do. Yeah, this book was a fun book. It was a bit more of a comedic book too. Because it was very much like fish out of water stories. They didn't know how to socialize with humans. Like in the Wonder Twins, the Super Friends, they were very much just like teenagers.
Yeah.
Period. They acted just like Earth teenagers for the most part. Although the idealized ones, where they're very polite and respectful and all that. But with these ones, they're out of touch. Like there's an entire storyline, or not storyline, entire scene where Zane starts talking about how their planet essentially breaks out into an orgy during certain events, and
Uh,
yeah, very
well,
inappropriate stuff like that. So,
I mean, to be fair, the Romans had their own version of that kind of thing. All right, guys, they're not really doing Bronze Age hijinks anymore, but it sounds like they're doing some very cool stuff as
I mean,
so,
they're after the problem is that their comic series did not last very long. Like I said before, Brian Michael Bendis had created this group of comics called Wonder Comics for DC. And it
mhm,
was essentially aimed at younger heroes, and it was supposed to be a bit more of a fun storytelling thing. So, Young Justice is traveling through the multiverse. The Wonder Twins are going to high school. There was a character, Naomi, who was introduced, who briefly had a TV show, in fact. Yeah,
okay,
she was a character that had a lot of potential, but just it never felt like they quite knew what to do with her.
okay.
And the helm of this, Brian Michael Bendis, he's a very divisive writer. Some people love him, some people hate him. I'm one of those people who feel like with the right guidance by an editor who can like direct him properly, he can
Mhm.
be a great writer. But unfortunately, he often has too many ideas and just not enough time or ability to develop them. So, for
Uh,
example, Young Justice was very half baked. Like the characters never really feel like they got a story arc development or anything like that. It just kind of felt like events were happening to them. And as a result of this kind of writing style, and direction, because again, he was running this. He was essentially the editor and the writer for several of the books.
mhm,
None of the books really had like they had a good sense of direction, and all kind of ended abruptly. The Wonder Twins book ended pretty early on,
mhm,
and they ended up briefly joining Young Justice for like the tail end of their run for the end of their first major story arc.
mhm.
And then essentially they just kind of became background characters, briefly appearing at the Hall of Justice in the Justice League books, maybe having like a speaking role here or there, and maybe a Superman issue. And they kind of fell off. Their latest big appearance, honestly, would probably have to be the DC vampire storyline that's happening or happened. I'm not sure if it's included. So that one was an alternate universe, what else or Elseworld story
Mhm.
where essentially vampires have risen up against the entire DC planet,
Did they do vampires because Marvel already did zombies?
possibly. Although they did their own zombies thing too, so.
Okay.
But yeah, in this one, Zane and Jayna actually played a pretty big part in the first part of the storyline because Zane is murdered by a vampire Hal Jordan and vampire Wonder Woman, I believe,
Ooh,
under
they
the
got
direction
Diana?
under the direction of the Vampire King, Nightwing. And Jaina is working with the heroes to try to find out who committed these murders and stuff like that because, her brother was killed.
Mhm.
And yeah, that arguably has been like their most prominent appearance I can think of recently. They've kind of fallen back into limbo for the most part. I think I've seen them in the background of the current Justice League Unlimited, but they have not been a major role ever since DC Vampires.
So, given that the Wonder Twins have once again sort of shuffled out of the continuity in many ways again, do you think that they're going to come back before, my kid goes to college or.
I mean, it's very possible because, the Wonder Twins have their fans, obviously. They keep trying to bring them back into continuity. It's just with varying degrees of success. Like, I do feel like the version that they did for the Wonder Comics had the potential to, stick around. But it's just one of those where that entire run just kind of felt not fully realized.
Mhm.
Wonder Comics. And it just kind of feels like they need to move the characters forward to do that. Because one problem that they had was a lot of these characters were being regressed. Young Justice, for example, had it where Robin, Superboy, Impulse, and Wonder Girl all felt like they were younger versions of who they were when we last saw them together. Like these versions of the characters. Like their
Aging is
designs look.
very weird in the comics verse because what do you
Yeah.
mean Marvin and Wendy and them grew up and went to college, but everybody else is just like, all right, you're gonna, forget how you're potty trained or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like Marvin, Wendy, and Wonder Dog have their own traumatic storylines with how they
Yeah.
were reintroduced. Let's just say they they made it to college, and then what happened afterwards was
They made it to college.
because they were rewritten as teen super geniuses who graduated college at like 12.
That is a
But
terrible idea.
yeah,
That
then
is
they
it.
decided to work for the Titans, and that didn't work well for them. But going back to Wendy,
Yeah.
or not Wendy, to the Wonder Twins. So there's potential for them to be brought back, and they are part of the continuity now. They're just not being utilized.
I think they'll have a
So
better shot of it if they actually have Southeast Asian actors playing it. Like, there's a lot of,
yeah,
demands for authenticity these days.
yeah, it's like the Wonder Twins have gotten like one live action appearance before, and that was in Smallville. They had an episode where they were kind of like teen thieves with the water and shapeshifting abilities, which were underutilized because it was CW back in the day.
Yeah.
But it did end on a good note with Superman inspiring them to be heroes. Gleek was, ignored entirely, except for a brief appearance of him on the back of, I think, Jayna's cell phone.
Okay, I'll take it.
And then, but Gleek got an appearance in the CW shows. Well, not an appearance, but at the end of one of the big crossovers, I think Crisis on Infinite Earths,
Mhm.
when the League is assembling for the first time after Green Arrow has died and all the Earths have been merged to one, you hear Gleek's insufferable laugh in the rafters, implying that he is in the Hall of Justice.
All right. Well, you know what?
So
He
I'm
might
just
be
saying,
the
it's like
mastermind behind it all.
there's always going to be people who love them, and hopefully, it would be great if we could get a Wonder Twins type of live action thing with proper casting, or just have them back in a comic on a team book, maybe.
Or, if we could just do it with with less of a time gap, like let's make it like 10 years maybe. 10 years is fine. 10 years is fine. We don't need to do 20. Keep them in the zeitgeist because I had no idea who Hugo Strange was. Listen to our episode from last week. Anyway, we are at the point though where we should talk about calendar-wise our debuts and premieres and anniversaries. So, here's a few things that are happening this week in the Marvel and DC multiverses. Hope Summers made her debut in X-Men 2 to 5 in 2007.
The Mutant Messiah.
Jimmy Olsen's birthday is November 29th. So a Sagittarius who likes to wander around,
And play with
groundbreaking.
all these items that Superman irresponsibly gives him. Jimmy deserves
Groundbreaking.
an entire episode to himself just on how insane his life has been.
Probably a good idea. So on 11/30, 1982, we have Roderick Kingsley making his debut as the Hobgoblin in Amazing Spider-Man number 238 by Roger
One
Stern.
of many hobgoblins.
Well, yes, but Roderick Kingsley's debut as a Hobgoblin. So Roger Stern, John Romita Sr., and John Romita Jr. Um, that's family act. Oh, it's beautiful. And for our December babies, 1966, Artist Slade's Ghost Rider actually debuts in Ghost Rider #1 by Gary Friedrich and Dick Ayers. And then he later changed his name to Phantom Rider for various reasons. Yeah, what else?
No, you had the other Ghost Riders. They had to, get the name. It's essentially what they did to Monica Rambeau.
That's fair. Well, listeners, we have come to the end of our podcast. I know. How is it over so soon? Well, good news. Our next episode is coming out next week. Or you can listen to this episode or the archives again if that's not fast enough.
Nerd cred takes time to build.
But if you can overcome being able to be beaten by a sponge, well, by golly, you can do anything. Okay, here comes the Patreon joke that I warned you about at the beginning. Are you ready?
All right. Yep.
Listeners, you should subscribe to our Patreon for Black Friday because I am Black and it is Friday. Or we are a small business Saturday. Or, please?
She was very proud of that joke. Please laugh.
You didn't have to jab me right there. Okay.
Love you.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's time to mention that we have an Instagram. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and we're working on expanding our reach.
So if you like the episode, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe, especially if you're trying to up your nerd cred.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. And
if you're looking for me across platforms, I'm at CIRACDAVIS, Kira C. Davis.
And I'm at AMDSArt. Come yell at me about continuity errors or show me your fan art or whatever.
Make sure you put the underscore in there.
Well, it depends on which account you're going for. Instagram, AMDS_art. Other platforms, AMDSArt.
Fair. All right. Well, if you have a burning question you want us to discuss that you can up your nerd cred, make sure you like and subscribe and leave comments. And if we pick your question, we will shout you out in the discussion segment. Yeah. Also, make sure you get your friends to like and subscribe too. Oh, and your family and any of the coworkers you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you. And that guy on the bus.
Good night, everybody.